little bit more about the U.S. Air Force and their really unique program. It's called AFWERX. So let's begin. Okay, so that's a really nice picture of me. My name is Oscar Radensky. I'm the marketing manager at Eagle Point Funding. And on the side of the screen, you can see there's a QR code that you can use to book a call to talk a little bit more in depth about your own personal situation or what your company is looking at, what you guys are looking for, and how to get there. We're more than happy to speak. I think that we're doing a promotion that if you book from the webinar, we'll throw in a month of consulting with any contract we sign. So usually it's 9 months, but anyone who books from the webinar will get 10 months. That being said, let's begin. Okay, so for 2020, the federal budget for research and development was $161.5 billion. What the trends have been in recent years, because I know that's probably the question on everyone's mind is, what's it going to be in 2021, right? New administration, new year, really turbulent previous year. Is there funding cuts? What's going to happen? Just so everyone knows, what usually happens with research and development funding is that it's on an upward trend, and 2021 is unlikely to stray from that path. Even with Corona, there have been Corona-related funding that was open. So a lot of, again, it's been turbulent, but at the same time, there's been a lot of opportunity, a lot of availability, and that's not expected to change. Just to talk a little bit about Q1, Q1 it's based more of the 2020 budget. So it's not really running on 2021 budget yet because that budget has not yet been allocated. I think the 2021 budget's set to be approved in around February or March. So we're still working with the 2020 budget, which is very robust. So no worries there for the Q1 funding programs, which we're going to talk a little bit more about in this webinar. Okay, so one might ask, what's so great about government funding? And why shouldn't I just go to a bunch of investors and raise capital there? Government funding, federal funding is non-dilutive. So dilutive funding, pretty sure everyone on the webinar probably is somewhat familiar. There's usually transfer of equity involved, can come with board members. IP rights can be questioned, could be conflicts of interest, and you are beholden to a outside entity. Non-dilutive funding, again, it's the U.S. government essentially wants you to run your company the way you want to run it, and they want to fund your projects. They don't want to get involved in the politics of your projects or of board members or shareholding. They want you to develop the technology that they like in the way that you want to do it. So that's really their goal. And that brings us to our next slide. Federal funding is viewed as a golden seal of approval in a way. For every dollar that is invested from the federal government, a lot of private sector companies see investment from private investors eightfold about 8 years later. So basically what that means, to kind of break it down, is that if you are able to impress the scientists at NASA and have, oh wow, this is really something great, and this is really something that we want to fund, then private investors are going to say, hey, we should jump on this ship too, right? It makes sense, and it really does work. A lot of really interesting technologies that we've seen have come from federal funding, like GPS and Siri. Okay, and that brings us to our next slide. 6 out of the 60,000 grant-backed companies, you guys probably recognize a few. So again, a lot of these companies got their start with federal funding. So why is the US federal government boosting industry? What do they have to gain out of it? Well, we'll start with the first one. They are looking to find a solve for some of their problems. My favorite example, and it's relevant to this webinar, is let's say the Air Force is looking for a new high-tech augmented reality helmet, right? So they're seeking a solution to their own challenge. And their goal at the end of the day is a business to government contract. They're looking for a business to build and make this augmented reality headset that they could use for their pilots. And they're willing to fund that project and help out with that project. So it's kind of like I was saying. So how the roadmap is that they realize, hey, we need this helmet. They'll post a opportunity, a solicitation for this. They will find out. There's 20 companies that make augmented reality helmets. They all make a proposal. They'll look at them, choose maybe the best 3, let's say, and then they'll make an investment to the best 3. They'll see how those 3 perform in R&D, and maybe they'll just select one as the provider of augmented reality helmets to the Air Force, right? And then this leads us to the second kind of way that the government uses federal funding. They are using it as seed money for private industry. So basically what they're trying to do is they're being quote unquote altruistic, and they're trying to grow the economy and society, because what happens a lot of the time is if they invest money, they tend to see, the economy grows, and that's beneficial for the government. And you can see that further on this page. We can see how the altruistic motives, kind of easy bullet points, improve quality of life, advancement of technology, job creation. But the capitalistic motives, this is where it gets interesting. For every dollar that they invest, they get $2.30 back in taxes. So they are really benefiting at the end of the day from the funding these companies. So again, if you grow industry, you grow business, especially business that's not, you're not really, it's new business, it's new technology. So they're really gaining and benefiting from working within this federal funding system and really helping these companies and growing these companies to become fully fledged. All right, and here is a breakdown of how SBIRs or SBIRs, better known as Small Business Innovation Research Grants, work. Usually, phase 1, it's proof of concept. Funding can range anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000. And so after phase 1, they like what you had for your proof of concept. They want to see a prototype. That's phase 2. $750,000 up to $1.6 million. Phase 2B could be government, business to government contracts, which are fantastic. Phase 3 could be dollar for dollar fund matching, as well as commercialization assistance. Again, so the nice thing about SBIRs is that you're able to really kind of understand what to anticipate, and there's a pretty nice roadmap. For a lot of the companies we work with, at least, the end goal isn't necessarily just phase 2, because phase 2 definitely looks, at least on this screen, the most appetizing. But phase 3 and 2B are really, really, really great, because gaining, as this webinar title is, gaining a tier 1 client is something that people definitely would like to have. Okay, so in terms of R&D grant mechanisms, you'll see that SBIRs or SBIRs are only 3.2% of the pie. The rest of them are broad agency announcements and small business technology transfers. Small business technology transfers are for businesses that are paired up with a research institution. Feel free to book a call and talk to me a little bit more about that. It's an interesting kind of segment, because it's the competition is very different, because a lot of companies aren't necessarily paired with small business, or was paired with universities or research labs. So again, it does get interesting. That being said, broad agency announcements make up the biggest piece of the pie. What broad agency announcements are is it's usually continuous funding of 2 to 5 years. There are pretty high award ceilings. It's usually $100,000 to $65 million. But to be totally frank, I think most of them hover around $1 million. Again, it depends on the project. Broad agency announcements are broad, hence the name broad, right? But basically what that means is that you could be working or competing with a company that is an Amazon, a Google, a Microsoft, or Raytheon. That's why the award ceilings can get pretty high. That being said, it's good to be aware of them and to work with them, because they could get very interesting. There's been a new initiative called AFWERX that is mostly broad agency announcement, And what's fascinating about it is it does have some of the SBIR feel to it still, and some of the restrictions are still there. So it's something to be on your radar and something to know about. Okay, so this comes up quite a bit in the calls that I have, the people that I talk to. It's what can these grants cover? Can they cover salaries? Answer, yes. They're basically able to cover anything listed here. What is interesting is the 7% profit. Usually there's about 5 to 10% of the grant money that you're able to use for whatever you want, right? So 93% needs to be used for anything on this list. And then again, you can use that 7% for something else, which is nice to have a little bit of wiggle room. Again, what I like to tell people is that each agency does have its own lingo and compliance and requirements, which is something to be aware of. Some agencies can be stricter, some of them can be less strict, something to be aware of. Okay, so there are quite a few programs out there that are looking for business to government. Basically, they're funding for business to government interaction in the end. Again, we have AFWERX smack dab in the middle, Army Applications Lab, X-Tech Search, DIU, and DHS Silicon Valley Innovation Program. In addition, I believe that the DOE and NASA have had a few forays into the business to government contract world. Okay, so to get to the meat of the presentation, right? AFWERX, important dates. The pre-release was on December 8th. It officially opens January 14th, and it closes on February 18th. Again, exact focus topics for this release have not been as razor focused as 20.3. 20.3, they released, I think it was a 75-page document. And that was great because you were able to read through exactly what they wanted, exactly what they were interested in. So that was definitely something that was significant. For this one, maybe on January 14th, we'll see a little bit more. It's still to be seen, right? AFWERX in a nutshell. So basically, it's Air Force innovators who are trying to bring solutions to the Air Force. It's been recently established, which is also why it's been really taking off in terms of just not being your usual federal agency when it comes to funding, right? They're not doing the whole, oh, you submit and then wait 6 months for us to get back to you. Their website says itself that they will give you an answer about whether you've won within 30 to 45 days. That number can vary depending on how many applicants they have. And it's been a little bit, it changes from time to time, but in general, they are faster and they are more, they're trying to take a venture capital, air quotes, kind of approach to federal funding. And the goal is to enhance the effectiveness of the Air Force by being more thoughtful, deliberate, and bringing better innovation. And then again, in red and bold, solve the unknown problem. Okay, so you essentially have to pitch to the Air Force about how your tech can help them. Just like I was saying with the augmented reality headsets, right? You want to show to them that this is the best headset and your pilots will love this headset. And so basically what they do, it's like all SBIR funding, it's small bet, and that brings the big bet. Small bet is your phase one, your proof of concept. They put it in, see how you perform, and then you get phase two. And so they're looking to eventually, use that helmet for themselves. So it does kind of bring it all together, but they're doing this in a way that it doesn't expose themselves to too much risk, right? Because if they were to, run right into a contract with a new company, they wouldn't necessarily be able to see in the same way that they do with SBIR, how the company grows, how they're able to adapt, how they're able to respond to the need that they have. So there are many success factors, but on the slide, we have a few of them. And I'm going to just dive a little bit more into the commercial success number 4. I was talking to someone earlier, I think it was 2 weeks ago at this point, and they told me that they lost, they did not win AFWERX. And the reason for this, because they spoke to their program manager, was not because of their technology. It was not because of anything, it was actually because on their actual application, they have someone else write it for them. And they wrote that they aren't necessarily a fully commercialized company. Whatever that means, the issue with that is that what happened at the end of the day is that the acquisition manager, the program manager reading that said, well, these guys aren't looking to be commercial, right? And so that's a huge issue. You need to be able to, their end goal, again, they are the quote unquote greedy company. They're looking to solve their own agency challenge. At the same time, the goal of the SBIR program or SBIR program is to bring commercialization and to help the economy overall. They want that tax money at the end of the day, right? So again, this is a slide that's just, kind of visualizing the various phases. They're really, again, exploration. They're checking you out on phase 1, seeing if it makes sense. Phase 2, it's piloting, testing, checking it out again. And then phase 3, it's where you have the forest commercialization, and you're going all the way to the expansion and really getting that B2G contract hopefully running. Okay, so this is 20.3. Some of the key information, again, 21.1 shouldn't be much different. Phase 1 award size is $50,000. Duration is 2-ish months, right? And then phase 2 is $750,000. It could be 12 months. And the goal is to test technology. The reason we have asterisks on the timeframes is because, again, on 20.3, the deadline was pushed a little bit. So they did not necessarily, because the actual applications closed later, it wasn't necessarily 60 days. If you did the original deadline, it was longer, right? So that's why there are asterisks. Okay, so there are 3 options for going through the AFWERX process. You could do the traditional phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. You could do direct from phase 1 to phase 3. That's possible. I believe you need, for both of the other 2, you're going to need a memorandum of understanding from an Air Force stakeholder. And what that means is essentially that you get an Air Force stakeholder to say, hey, XYZ company looks amazing. We love their augmented reality headsets. And yeah, we're happy to work with them. Then you could go direct to phase 2 or direct to phase 3. Because again, you already have an Air Force customer. Well, not necessarily a customer, but there's an Air Force stakeholder saying, hey, this is interesting and we like it. All right, so the focus of phase 1 is to explore innovative defense-related dual-purpose technologies that might not be covered by other SBIR topics. So again, they're really looking for, sometimes it's razor focused. So if you look through the 75-page SBIR focus topics from AFWERX from the last opening, it's still up on their website, by the way. You could download it right now. You'll see that some of the topics are extremely granular. They go into the finest of details, and some of them are very broad. In addition to that, they usually almost always have in other topics. And this is because they know what they don't know, right? They know that they don't necessarily know that there's something better out there that could help them, but they're all ears, right? So they can. Okay, so I will include the, at the end of the presentation, I will make sure to include the link to the document. It is, I will get that to you guys, no worries. You might want to remind me again, but I will. Okay, moving on. Phase 2, again, phase 2, the text on this slide's a lot like phase 1. Again, they're looking to flesh out what they've already seen in phase 1. So it's, hey, phase 1, you did great. You showed us a proof of concept for the let's do a different technology, right? I'm sure everyone's tired of hearing about cool helmets. You did an AI data mining kind of technology that can help, one, find the data, but also organize the data for the Air Force. Let's see how it actually works now that we gave you $50,000 to start that up. Let's see if you have a prototype. And so that's really the piloting phase. And so in terms of the open topic, they really mean open topic. So like I was saying, they don't know what they don't know. And I think more succinctly, what I put on the slide is solve the unknown problem. So solve something that they don't even know that they might need, right? If they can potentially, cut down on spending on ridiculous things or save time, save energy, save effort, they're more than happy to. You just have to bring the idea to them. There's so much out there that they're not aware of. So that's really what AFWERX is about. That's really the spirit of AFWERX. Okay, our deadlines personally, we have an early bird deadline that's already passed to get started on working on the AFWERX application. We do have a last chance deadline of January 15th. So I know we're cutting it a little bit close, but again, we're somewhat flexible just because putting together an application, especially for AFWERX, I think for this round, if I'm not mistaken, they're looking for a 25 slideshow, as well as an optional 5-pager. All right, something that's even, maybe even more interesting to some of us is the AFWERX Pitch Day events. So as you see in that little headline, if you guys can all read it, instant contracts, right? So what happens is that AFWERX, not so much with Corona, but I think they're still hosting a few of them, but not in person, I don't think. They basically have pitch days where if you're accepted to it, you go and you pitch. And if you win, which in a few of them, most of the companies that were invited to did, they will award you the money day of, money hits your account same day. We like to call it credit card swipe. And so that's a really fascinating program, really something to be aware of and on the lookout for. Okay, again, so this is a little bit more of a deep dive. If you're invited to pitch, you pitch to the stakeholders, and then in the same day, you're able to win, and it's a 1-page contract usually. And the current topics are advanced manufacturing and rapid sustainment. And so basically they're looking for anything there. In those focus topics, feel free to look at the AFWERX website to get a better idea of it. I highly recommend that if you guys are in that area or industry, definitely look into it. And again, it's very worthwhile as opposed to some of these grants where you're putting together a lot of work. This is a pitch day, so for some it might be easier, for some it might be harder. Either way, something to keep in your toolkit, something good to know about. Okay, so on this slide, we're going to discuss some of the winners that Eagle Point Funding has had with I believe with AFWERX. Yeah, so we've had quite a few. I'm not going to read them all to you because I do not want to put you guys to sleep. But basically, AFWERX for us has been quite the successful program. We've had really, some really interesting companies, but essentially they are they are pretty, what should I say, streamlined to work with. It's been a good experience overall with them. Definitely one of the easier, more fast processes. Okay, so this is our results. We've submitted for 24 submissions. We've won 14 phase 1s and 2 direct to phase 2 submissions. And we are still waiting on a few of our phase 2 submissions because they take a little bit longer, but 67% success rate with AFWERX. Okay, so I'm gonna, again, I know we mostly signed up for AFWERX, but I would be remiss to not talk a little bit about some of the Q1 opportunities available right now. So the Department of Energy, as well as AFWERX is within the DoD, kind of umbrella, but the Department of Energy has a really robust program. They're closing in February. They have over 157 focus topics. Believe it or not, a lot of them aren't necessarily specifically energy related. Their focus topics have ranged anywhere from cybersecurity, AI to, again, energy related, right? But again, there's a lot out there. I highly recommend that you either book a call or talk to us or take a look at their website, check it out. NASA is actually closing in 2 days. So might be a little bit late for some, but they are doing some really cool stuff. They also have a very granular focus areas. If you guys want to look at that as well, I could probably link it. The NSF is, again, they're fantastic. Their phase one funding is usually 256,000, and they have a very robust program, and they are one of the altruistic agencies, right? So they're not just doing, you know, looking for the data mining or helmet solution. They are looking for almost everything. Again, they're fantastic. Okay, the deadline for us passed, but again, the other agencies we can still talk about. In terms of the DoD, our personal deadline is for Eagle Point funding is January 12th. AFWERX is January 15th. And then for the NSF, it's February 2nd. Definitely recommend looking into the NSF. So you might ask, after all of this, how do I win one of these, right? That's a great question. So what we do is we find multiple opportunities. So we're not just looking for one, we're not just looking for two, we're looking anywhere from 5 to 10 opportunities, hopefully more. We understand the system. We have years of experience in it. And again, this is kind of like, it's kind of like a job interview almost in a way. You want to, basically, you want to focus your resume or your cover letter to your target audience. So the people reading your submission at AFWERX are not the same people reading it at the NSF, right? And they're looking for two totally different things. So you have to know the system and you have to build a clear case for yourself. The reason why AFWERX needs my technology is this, right? And so again, tell your story in a concise and compelling manner. And that again, kind of speaks for itself, makes sense. Lastly, do the multi-submissions. So again, if you're looking to win federal funding, the best way isn't to, you know, apply for the NSF and then wait 6 months, because that is a tough wait. That's a long time before you get funded. You want to be able to look at funding from any agency that's relevant to you. And that's what really makes the most sense. You want to be able to, you know, be working on a phase one and at the same time be winning a phase two, because that's what's going to give you the most benefit. That's going to yield you the most, you know, the most grant money awarded. A little bit about us. Eagle Point Funding, we're a division of FreeMind. FreeMind was established in 1999. We've won over 1.5, I think it's 1.6 at this point, $billion in federal research and development funding, have over 500 active clients, and we have a seriously robust team of professionals, analysts, anything, to make sure that we're able to, you know, be relevant and apply to these grants and submit to these grants and find these grants for our clients. So what to expect if you do start working with us is an introduction within 24 or 72 hours of signing with our professional department, our grant writing team. You'll be assigned a grant writer and a project manager for 9 months. That's something that we estimate is worth $60,000, because again, these people are working for you for 9 months and they are really putting 10 or hopefully minimum 5, probably around 10 contracts together for you. And then we're going to build a step-by-step strategic plan to know which opportunities to go after, how we're going to go after, because again, our goal is to win. And then we do not have a limit on the submissions we make. One fun fact I like to tell people is that it really depends on the company we work with, right? If you have a dual use case technology that could be applicable to multiple agencies, we're willing to apply to, I think we have a company that we're working with that we've done over 20 submissions for. It's just a matter of, hey, this is something we want to do and this is something we want to put the time into. So we usually do 5 minimum, 10 proposals on average. So again, this is kind of a summation of the what to expect. Perfect. So now I am going to open up the floor for some questions and answers. I'm going to connect my second screen so I can get the AFWERX link for the person who asked. But feel free to start firing away any questions you may have. I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. I'm more than happy to answer. If anyone wants anything, I'll answer away. So is the cost of my services able to be written into the application? So yes. So usually when it comes to so there's two parts of the Eagle Point funding structure. For the 9-month period, we take a retainer. It's usually $36,000. On top of that, we take a 5% success fee. The cost of our services, in terms of being able to be written into the application, in terms of the success fee, you are able to write that 5% in as part of the profit, just so you know. Are there any notable opportunities for data science or machine learning specifically, tools and platforms? Hey, Nick, absolutely. There's quite a bit. If you go on the NSF website, again, I'm giving you guys a lot of homework, so maybe I shouldn't, but if you go on the NSF website, if you go under, I believe it's information technologies, you'll see all of that and more. And even more than that, again, the DoD and the DOE both had in previous releases. Again, the DoD is still coming out, but in previous releases, they've had quite a few opportunities for data science. It's more relevant than many other. It's surprisingly, there's so much out there. Not so surprising. Brian, if you want me to let you ask over mic, I'm more than happy to do that. Let me unmute you. All right, I allowed you to talk, Brian. But
hey there. Thanks for going through this. It takes a lot of time and effort to do this. Quick question. So my entire team, I built them out. I recruited them about 18 months ago. We've been through Bunker Labs. We've been through Sever Phase 1 interview and through Techstars. We have some market penetration, but we're working on a career and education recommendation engine, specifically for the veteran transition, which has a ton of application for retention, recruiting, et cetera, that could be used DoD, VA, and other ways. But it doesn't seem like any of the DoD and VA or these new hybrid programs are really dedicated to the personnel piece. Do you have any insight into how to maybe get into something of that nature?
Sure. Just what do you mean by personnel piece?
Well, human capital. Human capital is never one of their sole kind of bubbles, if you will. But each piece of this has a human capital aspect. You know, you have to have workers, right? You have to have, you have to have talent. So, you know, my brother's in the Army. He's about to leave. Their retention is absolutely terrible. You know, the VA, I'm a vet. Like, I've been through the DoD, the VA. A lot of it is corporate focus of human capital. So I'm trying to just kind of get insight into how to even get started, because, you know, we have revenue coming in, but it's not enough to sustain any of us full time yet. And we're just trying to get that kind of boost, if you will.
Sure. Yeah. So that is one thing that, again, a lot of their grants, unfortunately, are really, really, really tech heavy. And that's actually something I've spoken with other people about as being somewhat of a flaw, because it doesn't necessarily make sense. One thing that kind of is, I guess, a consolation is that with the grant money, you can fund R&D salaries, which could help with the human capital aspect, right?
Yeah, 100%. And that's, I mean, that's really kind of where we're at, is that we need to bring on our AI technologists full time. So, and without that, it's just going to be a very slow, a much slower process. And we all work full time and have careers and families and all that. So just trying to kind of get an idea of how to get funding. Where do we go? What do we do?
Sure. I think, I mean, with the proof of concept phase, that could be a good, kickstart to that potentially. But again, there's a lot of different routes you could potentially take. And again, that would be more of kind of a holistic question rather than a R&D grant specialist, unfortunately. But again, if you do, again, the salaries can be paid for through these programs. So it could be a good first step.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. All right, who is funding COVID innovation, including filtration, diagnostics, and UV? I know that NSF had a a COVID round. The DoD 20.2 was actually all COVID related. Just so you know, Mark. Again, right now, I know the question was asked in the other chat, so I'll just ask it. I'll just answer it here as well. If you guys go on sbir.gov, you guys can look at all of the solicitations. In addition to all the solicitations, you guys can look at previous award data, which is invaluable. You can see every single award, or not every single, I think the program started in 1982. They have 181,000 records of awards that they've given out. So definitely look at sbir.gov in terms of finding the COVID innovation. I'm not sure if AFWERX is still doing that. What kind of happened is that there was a huge spike in COVID related grant funding, and now it's kind of gone back to, you know, focusing on deep technologies. Sure, I think I answered you, Brian. Again, I would say that it's difficult with the pre-revenue, but again, we could talk about that in person if you'd like a little bit more guidance, hopefully, on that. We could set up a call. Okay, so what was the name of the program that partners with universities? It's STTR, Small Business Technology Transfer. Definitely check it out. And basically, it's also, if you go on the chat and go on sbir.gov, you'll be able to look into those as well. They have quite a few. It's on the first tab about SBIR, STTR, and there's also on the second tab, there's solicitations. Where can I find the form for the application if I want to submit to your January 15th deadline, Vladimir? You can set up a call with me. If you use the QR code, that would be the first step. Basically, we have a pretty rigorous process in terms of who we work with and how we work with them. Because again, our end of day goal is to make sure that we're able to win for our clients. Okay, where can I find that? Topics and application formats requirement for Jan 15th submission. All docs prepared for submission. Thank you. Okay, so again, you can find a lot of the info for AFWERX on the AFWERX website. And I'm going to put that in the chat as well, because again, this should all be a tool in your guys' toolbox. Feel free to take a look, kick the tires, look around. And if you guys have any real specific questions that you wouldn't want to share, you could feel free to set up a call. Oh, COVID innovation, look at supply chain, cold storage. There's a huge push for this. Okay. Any constraints where the R&D is? Okay, so Udi, to talk a little bit into that, just so everyone knows, for SBIRs, not BAAs, but for SBIRs, there is a restraint that the research and development must be done in the US. That being said, broad agency announcements, which again are 96% of all funding, they can be all over the place and from anywhere. So let's just, okay. When you aid in writing the grants, what's the success rate of funding? I know you said 1.6 billion. What percentage of that is of those that submitted? I don't have that exact number in front of me. I would say that in general, it's around what we said for the AFWERX. So we're looking at around 67%. Yeah, so again, we've been pretty proficient in doing what we do, but I'm not entirely sure of those exact statistics for you, unfortunately. Any other questions? Feel free, don't be shy. I'll give you guys a couple more minutes. All right, in that case, I'll be on for another 2 minutes, but guys, feel free to set up a call, talk to me. I'm more than happy to discuss with anyone. Again, even if you don't necessarily work with Eagle Point funding, federal funding should be a piece of, you know, the overall pie, something that you should at least be aware of. Okay, do you have any SBI medical device application examples that were successful? Sorry about that, Drake. In terms of medical device applications, just so you know, our partner or our parent company, the FreeMind Group, does all of the healthcare grant kind of work on our end. So Eagle Point Funding focuses primarily in tech and defense. So if it's a medical device application that that's more technology than medical device, then we'll work with it. But again, FreeMind Group, you could look them up. They're phenomenal, and they are serious in the healthcare industry. You could also see them at the JP Morgan conference, I believe. But yeah, so we don't do the medical devices, just so you know, Drake. Okay, so Howard, the grants that do not need a US-based research and development team are broad agency announcements. You need 100% of the research and development to be in the US for SBIRs. And then in terms of, just so you guys know, ownership of the company needs to be 51% US residents for SBIRs. For broad agency announcements, that's not necessary. Do you know of any site that's granted SBIR applications for reference to look at? Yes, Drake. If you go on, again, I posted it in the chat. It's sbir.gov. It has the full award data for basically everyone. I'm going to try to type an answer to that one so you can see it. Make sure you can see it. Perfect. Okay, Vincent, how can you use my service? Great. We essentially, what we do is we find, identify, and apply for relevant open opportunities. What our service does is it takes into account what you guys are doing, what let's say in this case, the Air Force, because that's what this webinar was about, is looking for, and how to mesh that in a way that would be coherent and useful for all parties. And what that does is that it ups our success rate and it ups your success rate. At the end of the day, our goal is to win grants for the companies we work with. And grants, again, like we said in the presentation, they give a few benefits, but some of the best ones being non-dilutive funding, meaning funding that doesn't necessarily come with any strings attached. Again, there are potentials for business to government contracts, the U.S. government's a tier one client. And then lastly, again, there's all kinds of commercialization incentives, and it helps with investors down the road. So how you can use our service, like grant writers. Vincent, absolutely. You can set up a call. After this webinar, I'm going to send a recording as well as slides so that everyone can have the recording. In that, I'll also give a link to my calendar. Feel free to book some time. Again, I'm more than happy to do case by case, talk to you. Again, anything, we could talk about anything, but I'm more than happy to talk about federal funding in particular and working within those bounds. Perfect. Okay. Mark, I'm not entirely sure about your question, but yes, I'm sure there's quite a few opportunities for COVID. Again, I kind of been focusing mostly on AFWERX in this presentation, but again, if you guys want to check out sbio.gov, that should help clear up some things. Perfect, Vincent. All right, I'm going to give it another 2 minutes and then we're going to log off, but it was a pleasure speaking with everyone, and any last questions, I'm more than happy to answer. Sure, Vincent, looking forward. All right, Drake, I'm gonna type out the answer to this question so you definitely get it. Again, One of the reasons we help Drake is because it's not necessarily super easy to immediately find each topic that's relevant to you. Again, if you want to book a call, I can walk you through that as well. I don't mind. But again, the SBIR website's a good website. You can also, it might be a little bit easier for you if you check each individual website. So if you go on AFWERX and look at the focus topics and go on the NSF and look at the focus topics, the SBIR.gov website kind of condenses them down, but it doesn't necessarily make them very easy on the eyes. Let's put it that way. But it's a very good website. Nonprofits are eligible. Just so you guys know, they are. I would have to get a little bit more into it to talk more about it. But again, there has to be innovative technology. There has to be a clear tech part. So unfortunately, at least for research and development, if it's community building or something along those lines, they're not really looking for that. But if it's tech, they are, and it could be nonprofit. Cool, perfect. All right, everyone. It's been a pleasure speaking with all of you guys. Feel free to either set up a call or talk to me. If you have any questions about the process or how it works, I'd love to help. And have a good rest of your day. No problem, Howard.